Welcome back to Ultra Uncovered. I'm Russell Ditzworth, and I'm joined by co-host Corinne Chalvoy and frequent guest of the podcast, Graham Chalvoy. And we are here today for a Fireroad episode, a recap of the Javelina 100 mile. Corinne had a great day out at Javelina. And Corinne, let's just start right off. How are you feeling right now? We're about 4 days out. It is the day before Halloween, and it has cooled off in the desert. So, we didn't get to enjoy cooler temps that as today as on the race. But how are you feeling?
Yeah, it's just not fair that it's cool in the desert. It's not fun.
70 degrees today at 3 p.m.
75 the Saturday before the race, like the week before. And then it just decided to be a record high on race day. So yeah, it's a little bit weird that it's cold out here now and snowing tonight, but I guess it is that time of year. So yeah, I am feeling somewhat human today. But I would say this is the first day since the race that I've felt like kind of like a normal person, cognitively, like physically, emotionally. My feet are still a mess. I think I'm just one of those people that have feet problems, and I just need to learn to accept that and maybe ignore it during the race. We'll talk about that later. But no, I have gotten 2 good nights of sleep and 2 not good nights of sleep, which was weird because I expected not to be able to sleep the night after I finished because of caffeine and endorphins and everything else. But then I slept really good second night, and then last night was good, but the night before last was I just could not sleep. I was like, I got maybe 2 hours total. I was just super uncomfortable in like just physically really uncomfortable, and my mind also was like racing a lot, which I don't know. I mean, it was
well, you raced and now your mind's racing, so it kind of makes sense.
My mind's trying to catch up with what the hell I was doing. So yeah, but I'm getting there. Every day's a little bit better.
Awesome. Well, today I was hoping to go through some of the training leading up to the race, walk through the race with you. Graham was there with you. Your whole family was there supporting you. Our good friend.
There, Russ. We wanted you to be there.
You would have loved it, Russ.
Yeah.
Oh man, it would have been fantastic, and it makes me want to go to Javelina at some point. So it is officially on the bucket list in terms of like hundreds to go and experience, either as a support or as a racer. So yes, I would love to be out there. I spent Saturday. I ran in the morning, and then I spent the rest of the day basically having the live stream either on in my pocket, or as we were at dinner, we were watching the live stream together with some other friends from Castle Rock Run Club. So it was super fun to basically follow along with the women's race all day, seeing as how you were a story within it the entire time.
Well, and that's like, I'm kind of jealous of that because I've had to like catch up on podcasts to hear what happened in the other races because I didn't get to follow it myself. So it was kind of like, yeah, it was this weird thing. I actually remember, I think I was on lap 2 and I was going through an aid station, and one of the commentators there, he was like, all right, what do you like better, racing or commentating? As I was running by, and I'm like, I don't know, they're both hard. It's kind of funny, but like, yeah, I'm also a little jealous of not being able to like experience it as a fan, because it sounds like, especially like in the guys race at the front, it was really close, and like moves being made and people being only a couple minutes apart until the very, very end, which is like really wild. But yeah, I'm glad. We have to get your perspective on the live stream and what you thought of it.
Yeah, I definitely want to walk into that as well. But, not to beat around, but you finished in 15:24. You finished 5th female. It was an amazing day. I think they got it wrong on the live stream a few times, thinking that maybe it was your debut 100. But the stat that I think that I love the most is that you PR'd in the 100-mile distance by over 12 hours. So it's a half a day. So, you did get to start your race in the morning, and, you got to sleep that night. So, I mean, that's a pretty cool thing.
Well, and it was, we found this out later, but the 12th fastest female time ever at Javelina.
Wow, that's fantastic. So a 5th place finish, 12th place ever. So it would have been a top 10 prior to this year with the performances. And just the performances keep getting faster and faster year over year. And comparing these to to historical races just seems it's like we're rewriting the record books with some of these things and these performances.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a trend of mine. Same thing happened CCC year. I ran a really good time, but it was like 25th female, and it was like, dang it, that would have been top 10 like any other year. And I think that that's just the evolution of the sport, and especially on the women's side, which is really exciting. I guess it's like I like to also think that maybe this whole fueling revolution and kind of selfishly what is happening like with the company I'm working for, the feed, is enabling people to do this. Like it's pretty cool to see it happening. But yeah, there's just this trajectory in women's ultra running right now that I think, I don't know, we can talk about it a little bit more, but I think that you almost have to not set goals for yourself that are within boundaries of what other people have done or what you even think you can do in order to actually do really, really well at these races. Like if you're trying to win or be on the podium, because it just seems like those boundaries are being broken constantly. So I don't know. I had a goal of running 16 or 17 hours. And when I finished the first loop in 2:47, which I was supposed to come in around 3:10 or 3:20, I kind of had to tell myself, like, you just have to go with this. Like, you have to try and stay in it. And it's okay that it's a lot faster than you thought it was going to be. If it goes downhill and if it ends up being a Leadville death march, so be it. But right now you feel okay. So you kind of got to go with it and not be like, not hold yourself to what's in your mind in terms of the paces that you were aiming for.
As an aside, she was supposed to be in at 3:10 or 3:20 and comes in 15 minutes ahead of time. We weren't even ready for her. And we had the worst first crew stop. I walked out going, my God.
It wasn't the worst.
You almost didn't tag the timing.
Well, I did forget to go tag the timing mat at the start finish. And thank God for it was like the Colorado Springs crew of ladies. I think it was like Chantel and Lauren Puretz. They're chasing after me.
Screaming.
You gotta go back. Because I crewed. My plan was to go on the timing mat and then crew after. And I just stopped in our crew station before, and then I just left without going to tag the mat. So yeah, that was kind of funny, but it wasn't that bad. I still got out of there pretty quickly. And then you guys were dialed every single time after that.
It's true. So, yeah.
And every single time after that, did you go through the loop first and then get crewed? Okay. Yeah. So you followed the plan afterwards. The logistics worked afterwards. It is funny. So a couple things. Graham got on the live stream and was interviewed after the second lap. He made a little bit of a reference to that, like it was maybe a rough first transition, but we really nailed the second transition and we'll be ready from here on out. And I got to take the boys to the Airbnb and then I'll be back and I'll be ready to pace. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so early in the day. And he's already thinking about like, you're out on that third lap and the next one is going to be a pacing one. It's daytime and things are moving quickly. So, you mentioned like, you were trying to calm yourself down to like say like, okay, this is okay. Let me allow myself to have this day. Like what other things were you saying to yourself early on in the race as you are clearly, outstripping your original like thoughts and plans in terms of timing and pacing? Is it just like effort based? What are you thinking and what kinds of things are you telling yourself as you're going through there?
Yeah, it definitely effort based. And I felt like I was kind of like within my effort that I wanted to be. I didn't feel like I was over pushing necessarily. And I'll say like that first loop being with the rest of the chase pack, what was the chase pack? I didn't see Riley all day. They were gone from the get-go. And so it was really this pack of 4 or 5 women, including Anna Cassius and Erin Clark and Lauren Puretz and Hannah Allgood. And there might've been a couple others at times in there, but that was mainly the group that we were. Oh, Becca Wendell was in there early, that we were
Anna
all.
Cassius.
Yeah, we were all, she's Anna Loudon now,
Anna Loudon, yeah.
Previously Anna Cassius. Yeah, we were all just kind of working with each other. And there was definitely some energy created by having that group, which made me think back to Black Canyon, the year I ran with Leah and Rachel and Tessa Chesser all up in that front. And I was like, okay, maybe this is another one of those. I'm up here. I'm just going to be up here, and I'm going to use the energy that's here. I'm going to try to, honor the pace and honor the effort and take care of myself. But I actually lost touch with that group on the second loop.
You may not remember this, but so I'm running out of the aid station with her, and she starts to kind of debrief me on what happened and then what was going to happen the next lap. And you even said, you were like, we're going too fast. We're just going too fast. I'm going to let them all go. This is silly. I don't want to blow myself up. And then I noticed at Coyote Camp, you moved right back into like the midst of them again.
But that naturally happened. So yeah, I had heard a lot of people saying that they ran lap 2 too fast. I'd heard a lot of people from previous Javelinas, we interviewed Dakota Jones. Deb Hamberlin even mentioned it, saying like I went too fast on loop 2. Like everyone's like trying to just control it for lap 1, and you feel really fresh and you feel good and all this stuff. And then lap 2, I feel like, especially Dakota was saying like that people started racing, and it's too early to start doing that. And so I think because I knew that we ran lap 1 very fast, I was like, I need to just be careful and not overdo it in loop 2. It's going to get hot. But I did, because I slowed down a little at the beginning of that loop, I also didn't have the energy of the pack and like that kind of competitive and like, just like using each other. So I was worried that was going to make me slow down a little bit, but maybe 4 or 5 miles in, maybe around Coyote Camp, I saw Lauren in front of me. And so I'm like, I'm not too far back,
Right.
like from everybody. And so I just like put on music at that point and tried to kind of use the music. I had music on the whole time, but I would have like one headphone down, and really use like the music to just keep me, running at a pace that I wanted to be running at. And so, yeah, 1.2 on lap 1, I started cooling at the last aid station. So Coyote Camp, I soaked myself, and it was 8 in the morning, probably 8 or 8,
even 8:15.
Yeah, 8:15 in the morning.
That's really interesting. So even before the sun was up too high, and actually Raquel on Instagram had this question, like, what cooling strategies worked best for you during the race? And was there anything that didn't specifically work?
Yeah,
I know something didn't work.
You can speak to you can speak to that.
Did you fill an ice bandana tube full? Because we saw that on the live stream constantly, and somebody just like chucked. Yeah, I think it was Nicole Bitter that her thing was like massive, and she just chucked it on the ground, didn't even take it out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I could see that happening. No, it wasn't that. So Corinne had recently decided that she wanted to try the ice bandana attached to her shirt and sports bra. So it's like,
wait, this is a pro tip from Mary Denholm, who did this at Leadville. And there is a certain way to do it that you can tie it so that it's not choking you. You tie it to the straps.
The sports bra that she was wearing didn't have any type of structure in that strap. So we put it on, and Corinne is instantly like, almost like angry, like, this isn't working. Change this right now. And I was like, okay, we'll do it the normal way. So untie all the knots and retie it back on. That was part of why the first aid station stop wasn't all that great, but it was, I think we will continue to make that better.
Graham, did you test your not tying skills under pressure like Megan Roach?
Mine was okay. Corinne's dad tied his super tight, so when he went to get it off, it took a while, and I could just feel like the energy from Corinne just start to go negative.
What I started to do is untie it myself as I was coming into the aid stations.
Okay.
And I actually think that's a tip for people that, because I saw David having, exactly. I saw David having other people untie his too. Like, I think the play here is you untie your own ice bandana as you're getting close to the aid, so that it is already basically off, and you just have to take it off, and then all that has to be done is it has to be tied. The new one has to be tied on you. So you got to have 2 so that you can refill one, because refilling the ones that we have on the go is like a no-go. You have to have multiple, and you have to have one ready. So I had ice bandana. I put ice in my sleeves. I wore the same sleeves I wore for the 2020 javelina because they're kind of stretchy and they hold the ice pretty well. So I had ice in sleeves, and then something I didn't plan to do, but that I just did completely impromptu on the day was putting ice in my sports bra. So like, because you can't really refill the bandana during the loop at the other aid stations. You just don't want to spend the time. And so it was easy for me to go to the ice area and say to the volunteer, like, just ice right there. Just and pull my shirt up, just right there. Just put the ice down my shirt.
Those were women, right?
I don't care. Nursing, you do what you have to do. Like you can whip your boob out and nurse in the middle of a park because your child is hungry, and when you need ice, you need ice. So you just got to do it. So that actually ice in the sports bra was good too. I ended up taking that out and holding it in my hands at certain times. I ended up eating it a little bit at times, and then sponges. We did sponges and just water over the head. And I also wore the Omius headband. So that was interesting.
That was another question that was on someone asked, and I don't remember. Actually, it might have been Summer.
Yeah, I think
it was Summer. She needs to know the details on the is it Omius?
It's Omius.
Omius visor. Yeah, you had a feed branded Omius visor, and let me tell you, it looked way better than like the Paris Olympic Kipchoge ones. Those ones looked ridiculous. The feed one looked pretty good. I gotta hand it to it. But the
shout out to the feed for providing that for me. And I think the visor is better than the headband because the headband, all you see is the stones.
Yes.
But I'm kind of a visor person. There's also hats that have the capacity to hold the little stones. So what this is, if people are wondering, is it's like a thing that goes a headband, hat, whatever. There's multiple ways to carry it, but you put these little porous stones. They're very lightweight.
They almost feel like salt.
It's like
big chunks of salt.
Yeah, or like I'm sure my dad's probably rolling over because he's like, he's a geologist. He's a geologist. I'm sure he probably will. Anyways, they're very lightweight, like stones that hold water, and when they're wet, they're cold on the back. So the thought is that all of this area across your forehead has something cold on it. It also stays cold with like airflow. So you have to just keep it wet, and then the wind, the airflow, and the water make it cold on your forehead. And the science behind it is pretty mixed. I have heard David and Megan talk about a study that said it really didn't do anything. Perception wise, it feels cold. So, perception can help. I liked it. I mean, I had no issues with it, and maybe it helped, maybe it didn't, but I think I'm glad I had it on.
And the only downside to it is outrageously expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a couple $100 just for the stones. So do you get the bang for your buck? I don't know. I think
it is listed in a category on the feed called marginal gains, and I think that's exactly the category that it belongs in, right? If you're going after that 0.1 or that 0.01 or whatever it is, maybe that's your ticket. I would not trade the headband for training.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I think if you ask me honestly, what would be better, super shoes or that? I'd go super shoes all day. Just after kind of putting it on and kind of feeling it, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Super shoes really make.
But it was 100 degrees, and so every single thing that makes you feel cooler when it's completely exposed in 100 degrees, I think is not a bad thing. If it's not,
I mean, it was so hot that when I was pacing, only for 20 miles, I got all wet to start, and I got wet at every aid station because I was bone dry every time I got there.
Wow. Yeah. Even between like the 4-mile stints, that was enough to make it, you just go completely dry.
Yeah, because when I left, there was they had the temperature on the live stream, and we ran by it. It was 99 degrees when I left, like at 4 p.m.
Yeah, you could tell like when my ice bandana would be completely melted, and I was out of bottles, and I still had like a mile to go between what's the first one? Coyote and Jackass. I could feel it just like radiating, and just I started those were the only times that I started to kind of be like, oh God, I'm hot, really hot. So yeah.
Katie Asmuth on the live stream was definitely mama bearing some folks to like get wet. Like, you came in way too dry. You need to go get wet right now. You're not allowed to leave this aid station without cooling. So it was pretty neat to hear. All right, so just taking a quick step back here. Amazing performance. We're going to go through some of the final laps and some of your feelings and thoughts on that as well. But I want to talk a little bit about what's been different in your training, because you mentioned in your interview that you still feel like a student of the 100-mile distance, and this is a big step forward there. But you're not new to training for other ultra races. You've got Leadville in 2021, a big build for Run Rabbit Run last year, big builds for Black Canyon 100K, Canyons 100K, CC. Maybe is there some differences in your training block this time as compared to some of those other big ultra builds that you had?
Yeah, I mentioned it on the pre-race interview, but I did do a couple of different things. One was the 57-mile FKT, 5 weeks out. I think 6.
At least 6.
I think it was 6 or 7 weeks out. And then 100-mile week, 2 weeks before that. So I almost did like the biggest stimuli, couple of months out. And then I kind of just maintained. And then I did a little bit of speed work and then specific downhill heat training, very race specific stuff as we got into the 3 to 4 week before the race time frame. Definitely more running. And I know that, Megan Roach is amazing because she coached 2 through 5 on the women's side, and David coached number 1. So they have some things that they have figured out there.
And David was number 1.
So 75% of the golden tickets were swapped. And I think that, Megan was giving me, as I'm sure she was her other athletes, almost more marathon type training.
Definitely.
It was like marathon-esque, and I know this because that's what I was doing when I was leading up to running the Tucson Marathon. It was just extended into long runs. So it was, it was much, there was some vert, but it wasn't really focused on vert. It was focused on, pacing, running at a decent pace for a long period of time. And then there was 3 miles at marathon pace. 8 miles at marathon pace in long runs and stuff like that. So that was definitely different. But honestly, I think that one of the biggest reasons I was able to run this time here is because I looked back 2,000 plus miles for the last 4 years. I think it's all of that. I don't think it was necessarily just this block. I think it's and this is the same with David. David has put in a decade or 12 years or 15 years of training that has all led up to this. And I think that you can't, not mention just the consistency and the years and years
and the
of
giant
building
base that it creates.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I noticed in this block, especially after the FKT, is as you started to get into these long, fast workouts, there were multiple where you struggled and really were frustrated with, and you didn't feel like you were able to complete it the right way or the way you wanted to, and doubled back and did it again. And you always came through the second time feeling like, okay, nailed it. But that was one of the first times that it almost created a little bit of a pattern where you were frustrated that you weren't able to kind of get the most out of yourself. And I wonder if that in itself was part of the growth.
Yeah, that I was stretching myself, or I was doing something that was just beyond what I was actually capable of.
Yeah.
It's possible. Yeah. There was a long run that we did on Greenland that I literally, and I was trying to do a workout. What was that? I think it was 3-2-1 mile.
Yeah.
3-2-1 mile. So this was probably 4 weeks before, 3 to 4 weeks before.
Mm-hmm.
And Greenland is rolling dirt roads
at 7,000 feet.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. It was supposed to be 18 or 20 miles, and there was supposed to be a 3 mile, 2 mile, and 1 mile at marathon pace in there with 1 mile easy in between them. And I was feeling pretty good for the 3 mile. And then during the 2 mile, I was starting to not feel great. And at the end of that one, I literally like stopped and started crying, and Graham caught up to me, and I was like, I don't know. I can't do it. And he's like, well, just take it easy. And then we'll just, I said, let's just go really easy. And then let's try to get the 1 mile in, even if I have more rest in between. And I got about a 1/4 mile into the last mile effort, and just stopped because I couldn't do it. So it's not all like, I don't know. I guess all that to say that, like, yeah, there's some bad workouts.
Well, and I think one other thing, and this is, something for everyone to think about, but Hannah Allgood had run in that same exact area at a very specific pace that was very fast. And I think part of what was going on was a little bit of the comparison game. Like, I can't run, my marathon efforts at the total effort she ran. What am I doing out here? And I think that's one of the challenges that you face is, when you can go to areas where other fast people are, sometimes that comparison game's hard to get away from.
Well, it is. And I think it's also a lesson in just knowing that everybody you have to listen to yourself. Like, you have to pay attention to what's going on in your body. Everybody's at a different point in their training cycle. Everybody's done different things. And so I think, like, you have to honor that. And that goes back to the comparison thing. You can't compare it because it might not even be what is the right thing for you. Like, I think you just have to pay attention to your body. And I've learned this over the last year or so that, like, I'm 42 years old. There are times when on a weekend I'm supposed to do a long run and I'll start doing it. And I'm like, I should not do this right now. This is not the right thing for me. I should take an extra rest day. And then I should maybe do my long run on a Monday or something like that. And I think that it's really important to kind of like try to pay attention to just your own body and mind, all of that. But yeah, it was, I don't know. We knew Hannah was in real good shape when she had run that, and she was. And she did amazing.
She did, and that kind of leads me to another question. I mean, obviously, you've had pre-race interviews before. You had a quick pre-race interview on the day of here. You get mentioned in podcasts when they talk about like athletes to watch out for. So how do you internalize this? Does that come across as motivation? Does it come across as pressure? Does it come across, neutral? Like, I think that you've had some years of how that goes, and maybe it's changed over the years, but like, talk about that a little bit, because I think that that's, really interesting. I've heard you say on podcasts before that, you don't consider yourself like a professional athlete, but I think you should consider yourself an elite athlete in this sport.
So Scott Traer was probably my first interview when he interviewed me for Black Canyon, Chasing Gold. What sneakers are you going to wear?
Sneakers.
What's the sneakers?
Good choice. And so, yeah, I think that like when that happened, I do think it put pressure on me. I mean, this even goes back to like having a coach and racing. Like when we first started having coaches, Graham was like worried, do you want to have a coach? Because I don't want this to change your relationship with the sport. I think it's what everybody deals with as they like evolve in a sport. And if they get to a level where they're expected to have certain results, or you're sponsored, then are you doing it for the love of the sport anymore? Or is it a job?
Is it the gram?
Is it the gram?
We always do it for Graham.
Or
the Graham.
The gram.
Grams. Yeah. So yeah, like in all honesty, is it for Strava? Is it for is it whatever? And so yeah, I think that let's see. To answer your question, I think for me, I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with it, but I wasn't mentioned.
And I was really surprised about that.
It's okay.
So many people knew that you were running.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm not proven in the 100 mile distance. My only other 100 was Leadville when I ran 27 and a half hours and got 20th place. That's not something people are gonna be like, look out for that 20th place at Leadville. Let's go. Like that sounds dangerous. So I wasn't mentioned, and that was okay with me because like I've run in the desert quite a bit, and I usually run pretty well in the desert. So like I'm okay with that. I do think it adds pressure, and I think that everybody just has to like reconcile it and like process it, you know, in their own way to be able to handle it. But yeah, I don't know. I think, did I answer your question? Kind
I
of.
think you touched on a couple things. I will throw a shout out to Corinne Malcolm because she did mention your name in her description on Free Trail. But I did hear a few previews that had 0 mention. So you're right. You weren't like mentioned in every single one, but
And
she did throw your name out there.
Corinne Malcolm dropped. I think she said she was having hip or adductor or something like that. But when you came by, she was super cool and super cheery for you.
Which was really, that was awesome.
That was neat.
Well, and I ran a little bit with her at the very beginning. Her and Zach Marion and I were running together.
Nice.
And we were joking that we could just like have mics and be doing commentary from the field at that exact moment. Because that's basically like we were all together. And then I remember at one point in the first probably 3, it was probably like mile 3, that Zach looks down at his watch and he's like, yeah, nobody's running an 8-minute pace for this entire thing. And I said, except for like David and Raj Paul, we're definitely running that. But it was cool to share a little bit of time with Corinne Malcolm. And yeah, she's incredible. And I really like appreciate how she truly does like cheer for everybody out there. She gives a lot of good vibes. And I was actually excited to race her. So I thought she and I might, you know, end up running a fair amount together. I've never raced against her with her, but yeah, I was excited that she was part of the field.
And I told Corinne, and she kind of shot this down because she's busy with other things, but Corinne Malcolm and her should start a podcast and call it 2 C's on a pod, like 2 people.
2 P's on a pod, 2 C's between 2 C's. Now, Graham, to that point of like racing with, like, I'd love to hear about like your lap with Corinne and some of the antics that were going on with Aaron Clark and Adam Peterman. Because I heard you mentioned to me that maybe there was some little cat and mouse going on.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the big thing was Erin wasn't moving through the aid stations as fast as Corinne. So even though she would put a little bit of lead, we would come to the aid station, she'd still be in there, and we'd leave before her. So she continually had to catch up. So one of the funny things is when we first start, so Erin comes up. And
I was out first of the headquarters.
Yeah, we were at a headquarters before she was, and she picked up a pacer as well. And so we go, I don't know, probably maybe 2.5, 3 miles, and we start to hear footsteps behind us. And I kind of turn around and I see Erin coming with her pacer. So she passes, and her pacer's a guy, and Corinne's like, yeah, Erin's partner, I don't know, husband, I don't know where their status is, but like, is Adam. And I was like, that's cool. And I was like, wait, is that Adam Peterman?
Well, okay. All right. Yeah, that was kind of how it happened. Like they passed us and you didn't exactly know what Aaron looked like either. No. So they passed us and then they're running in front of us. And, you know, Adam's very tall and they're just running in front of us. And I knew exactly who it was because I'd been running all day. And I'm like, you know, that's fine, whatever. It's the uphill. The uphill is not my strength. It's okay. Like, that's fine. And then a little bit of, there's a little bit of gap that occurs. And Graham looks back at me and he's like, is that Adam Peterman? And I'm like, Adam Peterman. Like, oh my God. And then it was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. We're running with Aaron Clark and Adam Peterman. Like we're on a long run with them, which was cool. It was really cool. So anyways, then there was this hilarious thing when we met up at the next aid station. They were still in there and we left first. Then they passed us again and Adam had his shirt off. It's like, and Graham's like, yeah, you got to get some sun.
I was like, that's a good idea. Cause I was at that point, it's so hot. I'm like, maybe I should take my shirt too. I was like, Adam, that's a good idea to take shirt off. I'm like, maybe I should do that. And he's like, yeah, we're from Montana. We barely get any sun up there. And I was like, yeah, totally. He was like, 2 days from now, the sun's going to be gone. I was like, yeah, you're going to wash it off in the shower when you get home. So,
he thought it was really fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. So at that point, if somebody is coming up from behind you, is it just known that they are in the 100 mile? Like, cause you're just everyone else that you're coming across in the 100K or whatever is moving slower than you at that point?
Until there was I don't think there were any 100K runners that like passed us because of where we were at in the loops relative to them until the 31K. And that was lap 5.
And then there were some fast people
all
coming around.
31K, Ryan Montgomery ran past me and Katie Asmith, Helen, Faulkner, and all of those guys. And it's like, yeah, they're definitely in the 31. We know this.
They're in the 1 lap. They're in the 1 lap version of this thing.
They're on fresh legs for sure. So yeah.
Okay, I have one last pre-race question, and that is, you had a pretty big commitment right before the race. You were at the ATRA conference, and you helped organize the ATRA conference. So talk a little bit about that. Like, how did you deal with like the week before the race, and some of the things that were going on in preparation for like knowing that like, okay, I have a 100-miler this week. Like, what should I be doing?
Yeah, so I was helping organize the U.S. Trail Running Conference, USTRC, which is heavily supported by ATRA, but I was the assistant event director for it this year. And I knew for a long time this was the dates. And so I was, prepared for the fact that I was going to have to go to Knoxville on Tuesday, be at the conference Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday morning, fly back to Arizona early, and then not really have, much time before race day the next day. Overall, like everybody at the conference was pretty cool. They're race directors. So they were like, I said at the very beginning, guys, I'm going to be sitting down a lot and off my feet a lot because I'm running Javelina. And they were like, everybody was like, that's great. And
we get that.
I mean, Wednesday and Thursday, people were like, Corinne, are you drinking enough? Like, you better not be drinking alcohol. Put your feet up, sit down. So it was really cool. I just made it known from the get-go, and everyone was really on board with it. And actually, like, it was a neat environment to be in before because, like, there was a massively wide range of race directors, from people that had one very small race or even were just wanting to start a race, to Dale Garland and Steve Adderholt, the director of Cocodona, and the director of Mountain Marathon, and Matthias was out there. So like there was this range of race directors, but it was a really cool community. And like, everybody's just talking about their love of running. So it's a pretty good environment to be in. The travel did get to me a little bit. I was pretty tired. I was pretty tired on Friday. Even, I cut my shakeout like a mile short because I was like, I don't need to run. I need to rest. Maybe Megan and I have figured this out for me, but I think I do really well on a very heavy taper. I hardly ran it all the week of the race. Like I ran like 6 miles on Tuesday and like actually took 2 rest days and then ran 2 miles on Friday. So I barely ran at all. And that seems to work for me. So as David says, if you figure out what taper works for you, stick with it and do it every time. I think the plan will be, but other than like just the travel, I think it was actually okay to be kind of distracted and busy, as opposed to just thinking about the race all week. Like I did that at Leadville and it didn't serve me very well. So maybe, I don't know, it worked out okay. And it was really cool because all the people from the trail running conference were going to follow Javelina. And it kind of gave me another reason to be like, working hard and doing well. Like, oh, everybody's following along, like do it for all of those people too. So, yeah.
There was definitely a lot of people following along. You mentioned earlier, even tonight, you mentioned earlier, like, student of the sport, and especially trying to figure out the 100-mile distance. So how do you feel after completing the 100-mile distance at Javelina and having the day with run in you the entire time? I checked your cadence data. I don't know if you walked at all. Like the cadence data is like consistent all the way across, which is usually not the case for 100-milers. Usually you see like a lot of running in the first half, and then you see those dips in the end, and the average cadence goes down. Your average cadence was a running cadence basically the entire time. So talk a little bit about that, and talk about maybe how you feel about the 100-mile distance now.
Was my cadence 145 like it always?
I didn't say.
No, it's 160.
I mean, I've really been pushing like
45.
165. So 160 is not good. I did not hit my goals of the cadence. Yeah, I have a very low cadence for anyone who wonders what the hell we're talking about. But I didn't walk hardly at all. I ran 95% of the race.
Probably more. Because with me, you walked like a couple times on some of the steeper hills. Like you'd be like messing with something like a bottle or whatever, and you'd slow to a walk for like, I don't know, like 20 steps. But it was mostly just to fix whatever it was, and then bang, you run again.
Yeah, there was a lot of running. But it kind of goes back to like, the mantras thing that I posted today, and like the Corinne in motion stays in motion. Like I do think that there's something to that like you just continue it, you just stay in motion. And like it is, I thought to myself a couple times, like, I mean, number one, I knew that I couldn't really walk very much. I knew that if I was going to walk, I was going to have, 13 and 14-minute miles. And like, that was okay to maybe do for hitting 16 or 17 hours. But at the pace I was going at, I wasn't going to go sub 16 if I was walking at all. So even when it was a shuffle and I was maybe running 11s or 12s on kind of the uphill miles, I just kind of still stayed in that rhythm of running.
Well, and you had a song mantra.
Yeah, my song mantra was "Steady as She Goes"
by the Raconteurs.
Jack White is my favorite artist of all time. So "Steady as She Goes" and wanting to just be consistent was kind of the mantra as well. And so that was definitely in mind. And you can't be steady is like, yeah, you say it all the time, Russ, smooth is fast, fast is smooth.
Smooth is fast, fast is smooth. But honestly, that post was great and got a lot of good positive commentary. We should link to that one here because it had a list of 20 to 25 different like positive self-talk things, like you belong where you are in the race, like, hey, thank you legs, you're doing what you're supposed to do, like all of these things. A Corinne in motion stays in motion. For a fan of Newton's laws, I appreciate that one. So all of those ones were really good. We should link to that one so people can see it. Courtney gave you a high five on that one, so I think that's a pretty cool thing. Those were some of my favorites there. Sorry, Graham, go ahead.
Wait for him to come back.
It's a good look by him.
Russ?
I'm here.
Okay. We lost you for a second.
You looked like this for about 10 seconds.
Oh, no.
So you were saying that the Courtney one? Yeah,
the Courtney one was really cool. And just like,
steps on, by the way.
I know. Well, yes, I love Courtney. Yeah. So I think just speaking to that a little bit, like, yes. And somebody, I think Justin Kraft said, yeah, that's a seriously positive self-talk track. And it was. And like, I know that I race best when I am joyful and happy, and I try to stay in that frame of mind. And it does take some effort at times to try to get back into that. I told Graham a couple of times, like, I'm at a low, I'm having a low. I gotta, just work through it. Like, and the the negative starts to kind of come in, and you have to combat it, but it's like super important to combat it, or else, it can completely ruin your race. I think that it is mental. It is mental. And I just feel lucky that I had, I guess the energy and the motivation within myself to kind of stay in it mentally and stay in a positive headspace the entire race. That definitely hasn't happened every time. And there were times in this that I questioned it for sure. Like, it wasn't all rosy. There were a couple of little things that happened that I definitely had to like manage or figure out or adjust. One of them was that I got a major hamstring cramp, like debilitating hamstring cramp, lap 3. It made me start walking, and I actually came up on Deb Hamberlin.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know it was her, but I came up on her. And after I passed, I'm like, oh, I'm having a cramp really bad. And she was like, oh, what do you need? Do you need salt or anything? And I was like, I think I'm okay. Like, I'll, and so I just walked it out a little bit. And then I ended up like upping the electrolytes and was was able to get it back. But there was a moment there that I was like, that's it. Like, if I'm cramping right now, what if I keep cramping the rest of the day? What if I can't walk? What if I can't run anymore? Like, and thank God I figured it out, or it somehow it went away. But I also consciously like told myself like to relax in that moment. And I think you have to be like, you know, tell your legs, okay, it's all right, just relax. You know, you gotta like talk to your body and tell it what you need it to do. And I don't know, thank God, maybe it just regulated with the salt that I didn't have any more of those cramps.
You know, listening to the SWAT podcast, he said same thing. He had a couple of debilitating cramps that really screwed him up, and he had to, I mean, Teddy, his pacer, who's also a doctor, was saying, that's your body saying to walk. So walk for 1 minute, it will start slow jog and slowly get you back in. It sounds kind of like that. It's what you did, and I think that's the right move.
And I only need to do that because it had happened to me at Leadville Marathon, and the only way I got it back was walking for a little while and slowly starting to jog again. So thank God it worked. But yeah, like that was the case. And then I also had to manage like kind of my stomach all day, like just listening to it and being like, can I take another gel? Feeling like multiple times I felt like I was going to have diarrhea. I never did. I actually usually just had gas. But like,
and I uplifted the gas.
And you uplifted the gas. Thank you, Graham. Every single time I farted, Graham's like, good job. Yes. And I felt better. But, you know, like I was worried that I have, you know, I got to pay attention and back off on eating for a minute, or I got to get rid of the gas, or I got to like do something to settle my stomach. And so there's definitely like problem solving. But I also told you guys the day before that I really wanted to try to stay calm. I can get emotional. I needed to not, you know, do everything to like treat this more as like it's just business. We're, you know, there's no panicking. Definitely heard Courtney say like panicking is the absolute worst thing that can happen. And so like trying to avoid that at all costs, and just knowing in myself that like sometimes when I see my family, I get upset. I get like in a good way. Like I get like emotional and I let it out. And so I think me communicating that before the race, like helped you guys also know that like, okay, we're going to treat this like pit stop. We're going to just, you know, and you did. Yeah. And so it was just very kind of methodical and like calculated.
Yep. And I think you only got a little tiny bit emotional once when you were going out with Jess on lap 5. Right before you left, you got a little teary for a second. Yeah, and then that was it, and you were gone. And then, you know, running with Jess, I didn't figure you'd be emotional.
No, because Jess is so hardcore.
She is hardcore.
She's awesome. So she's awesome, though. I also got emotional at the finish line, which I can get.
Hey, that's the time to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jess is so hardcore. She tried to hug a Choya out there. Tell us about that.
Oh man, yeah, this was a funny story. So I love Jess, and it really did help to have, you know her, Russ. You've run with her so many times that she just like she bounces off the ground, like she just her stride and her legs. It's like she has springs in her legs, literally. And so watching that, I felt like I could kind of vicariously live through her and be like, oh, that's how my legs feel. Like, yes, let's go.
Just match that.
Yeah, she was definitely running in front of me, and then she was awesome. So she learned quickly. I told her that she had to tell people that we were passing, which Graham did, you know.
You had to tell me too.
I had to tell him. They had to speak for me because I didn't want to use any extra energy. It's like, this is one of your most important jobs. You got to tell people we're passing. And then she would start doing, she's like, we're passing on the left, but then she'd be too fast. And I'd be like lagging behind her, and then they wouldn't know I was coming. So I'm like, Jess, you got to tell them 2 people. And so every single time she's like, good job. We're passing on the left, 2 people.
You're telling me the same thing.
She said it you guys said it so many times.
Well, I bet I said it 100 times.
But it was awesome. The only downside of that is that I didn't get the benefit of saying good job, which I think you also internalized. So you were saying it for me, but you spent all the energy doing that. Okay, so we're coming up to Coyote Camp. We get to Coyote Camp. have a pretty quick stop. We leave Coyote Camp. It's dark, right? We're in headlamps. And she was trying to let me have that, the best path. And so she moved over a little bit to one side, and all of a sudden she goes, shit. And I'm like, what? And I look down and I look at her hand, and there's a Troya stuck on her hand.
And a Troya is a very, very prickly cactus that are known to kind of jump on you. They don't really, but that's what it feels like.
It was like about golf ball or bigger size. Bigger. It was stuck to her hand. And I was like, oh God. And she's like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And so I go, oh, we got to get rocks. We got to get rocks to try to take it off. So I pick up 2 rocks, but they were too small. I put the rocks on it to try to pull it off of her kind of quickly. And a couple of the little pricks get in my finger. And I was like, oh, I can't do this.
Nope.
Do this. So I just said to her, I was like, Jess, just go back to medical and tell them to take care of you. Just go back, because we were close enough. I was like, just go back to medical and have them take care of you. And she's like, okay. And so she did. And so then I had to run by myself. And I was like, is Jess gonna, I'm sure she'll try to catch back up to me, but I have no idea how long this is going to take. And then a couple miles later, I was like, I don't know, maybe Jess isn't going to come back.
Maybe she bailed. She's having a beer.
Like, forget this shit. I'm going back home.
Well, she told me, she was like, she goes back to the aid station and goes in, and there was like one person that could help her. And it's this woman who's doing something else. And she's like, hey, I've got a Choya stuck to me. Can you help me? And she was like, oh yeah, I got to go get my comb. So like 2 minutes later, comes back with the comb, walks over and says, like, hey, let me see this. And Jess is like, I gotta go get my runner. Can we get a move on here? And she like kind of messes with the comb. She's like, I don't think this is the right comb. I need to go get my other comb. She comes back with a different comb, and Jess is like losing her mind. Finally gets it all out, and she's like, tempo. So like she's not on Strava, and she used my watch, but I was the only one to see it. But she was running like 740s to go catch Corinne up the desert in the dark to try to tempo this thing out. And finally caught her.
Yeah, it was so. And then I was like thinking, it's dark. How's she going to know it's me? And I was like, wait, I wonder if Jess is saying like Corinne to every single person she passed. I remembered I had the tiara on, which has the light on it.
You are a 5'11" woman. You think so?
Jess was not mistaking you for the walkers in the 100K. I'm sorry.
Fair enough, but these are just the things that I was thinking about. So she did finally get chased back up to me, and then she'd been so used to running fast that she just like took off, and I'm like, Jess,
you can slow down now.
So, but it was awesome because we got to Jackass, and yeah, definitely the most difficult. And I think somebody asked this. Who was it? Want to give them a shout out. Thanks for the questions. Somebody asked about what my lowest point was. Colorado Vegan Adventure, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, whose name? I'm sorry, I can't remember what your actual name is. I know it, but I can't remember it right now. The lowest point, kind of mentally and physically. I mean, I had a little bit of a low with Graham, and part of that was because, like, I mean, you're 60 miles in, like, it just you have a long way to go still, and I really tried to just stay in the moment, but at some point it's Alex Meyer. Thank you. Yeah, she's awesome. So Alex asked about the lowest point, and yeah, that 5th loop with the climbs, on the first half of it was probably the hardest. I also got passed by Lauren, fairly early on in that. And I told her, I'm like, she's if she passes us, I'm not going with her because I can't, this is not the area for me to try to do that. Like it would be better for me to try to do that on the downhill. But to be totally honest, I didn't have anything extra. I did not have another gear to try to actually race at that point. And so I'm like, Graham, you told me this before. You said to just like enjoy the last lap and celebrate it and actually like have fun. And like, it was kind of hard to do, not to, to feel like I wasn't being as competitive as I had been earlier in terms of placement. But it was a celebration because I was still running, and it was mile 90. And I was like, that for me was a huge thing. And so when we got to Jackass and we had about 9 miles left, like I looked at my watch and I think we were right around 14:45 total time, which was, I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. Like I'm running so fast. And then I told Jess, I said, like, if we run 10-minute miles for the rest of this, like we'll be, or maybe I can't remember.
13:45.
15:45. So yeah, then I was like, we'll be sub 15:30 if we run. Yeah, or sub. We'll be well ahead of what I want to do. So let's just try to run 10-minute miles. So I asked her to just run 10-minute pace, and I would try to stay with her. She was using Graham's watch,
and I have a lot of different functions that appear on my watch on the main screen, and one of them is pace, and then one of them is something totally
effort
different.
Pace.
Effort pace, right?
Effort pace. So Jess's effort pace is
it's downhill. Like, so yeah. They were probably effort pace going downhill at like 8:45.
Well, yeah. So it would. Yeah. So anyways, we split the first mile and I looked down and it was like a 9:40 and I'm like, that's okay. And, we split the next mile and I looked down and it's a 9:40. I'm like, Jess, we're not running 10-minute pace. We're running 9:40 pace. And like, I don't think that I can hold that. And she's like, well, I don't know how to use Graham's watch. So I was just.
I'm just guessing.
She's like, so you gotta just tell me if I need to slow down. And that's super nice of her. If I don't know, I guess if I was hardcore like some of the guys, I would have been like, have Jess say like, we're running 8 and you better follow me, damn it, I don't care. But I was trying to like enjoy it and celebrate it. And then, yeah, we did run close to 10-minute pace for that last. So I did come in sub 15:30, which at that point, kind of that became the goal, is like, let's try to run as fast a time as you can. And hell, I would have loved to run 7-minute pace for the last 3 miles. That would have been amazing. And maybe one day with another 5 years of training under my belt, I could do that, but that wasn't happening on this day. So we just got to finish and the boys were there and it was awesome. It was great.
I thought your parents were there. Yeah. David and Megan were there. I mean, it was like all the people you want to see.
Yeah.
So Justin Kraft mentioned this question as well. Like, is the 100-mile distance your favorite distance now? Or how do you feel about the 100-mile distance and your progression through it right now?
I think the 100-mile distance is Justin's favorite distance. I wouldn't say that it is my favorite distance. I would say that I am really happy I had a really good 100-miler. I know that these probably won't all be in the future, but I think it was awesome to kind of feel like I cracked the code a little bit in terms of just being able to run a complete 100. It took 3 times, but yeah, it went really well for me. And I'm like, I don't know, that's really special. I'm not going to take it for granted. I don't think there's a lot of courses that you can run that much faster on, so I'm not expecting my times on other 100s to be equitable. But yeah, I don't know, maybe it's figuring out that like some of the runnable 100s, maybe that's my jam. Maybe and I ran 14 and a half hours at CCC. And so time on feet wise, I don't know, maybe that had something to do with like just 15 hours time on feet.
The amount of that race, the time on feet for that race.
Yeah.
I don't know if you realize this, but you did split like 8:30 something for the 100K, which I believe is probably your 100K PR, and it's over an hour faster than in 2020 when you ran the 100K for a second place finish there.
Yeah.
So,
we did realize
your third lap was phenomenal and put you in a fantastic position. On the contrary, Lauren Puretz had a really, really rough third lap and then an amazing last 2 laps. She's had quite a bit of experience at the 100-mile distance, including at Javelina. So I don't think it's out of the question to say that as you move forward with the 100-mile distance, there's room to improve and room to continue to run really, really well at these types of races.
So tell them what you ran the 100K in.
That's what he just said.
Okay, sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, 8:30. Yeah, an hour.
What was
8:35.
8:35, which I think was right on with what Jane Mouse ran this year to get second.
Yeah.
Moss, excuse me.
Yeah, the top two were female, I think, in the 100K.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, so it goes back to kind of like, I think about this at Black Canyon too, when I've run the 60K, and I'm like, oh, that was a good time. But actually, all the people that were winning the 100K are running that first 60K in that same time, and then they're continuing on for another 40K. So it was kind of like weird to be in that position myself of like, holy crap, like I ran 8:35 100K and I still ran another 40 miles after that. It was really cool. Like, I will say, like, I had looked at people's splits before this race, and I also used Ultra Pacer, which is an awesome website, to get some of my kind of goal times. But I'd looked at other people's pacing, and I had an idea of like what the trend was going to be in terms of the degradation over the laps. And I knew that some people had some 13 and 15 minute miles in there in laps 3, 4, or 5, and they'd still run fast times. So I think just doing a little bit of that research like helped a little bit, that I kind of always knew, even if I felt like I was moving really slow and I had a 12-minute mile, like that's okay in the scheme of things. That doesn't mean that I can't run a fast time here. So that was helpful.
Yeah.
What did Russ freeze?
Russ was so odd to that last comment you made. He has nothing to say. He's still speechless. Russ, you may talk now.
I'll ask Graham a question.
Okay.
Did you see any really good costumes?
I'll be honest with you, and when the Castle Rock Run Club group, who was all watching live stream, calls me like 45 minutes before he's come in. They were talking about all this stuff, and they're like, hey, did you see this? And did you see this? And I started chuckling. I was like, if it didn't happen within 10 minutes before or 10 minutes behind Corinne, I didn't probably pay attention to it. I was so like into your race that I just didn't pay attention.
Yeah. I saw a couple. There was like the guy in the green full body suit with like I don't know what they were. They weren't teeth, but like something coming out of the front of his mouth that was like, I think it was a bug. That was pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah, it was wild.
There were a number of Waldos I saw.
There are a lot of Waldos, yeah. Big time Waldos.
I guess Jeff Colt dressed up like Jeff McGavero, and everybody had trouble because Jeff Colt was walking around headquarters, and everybody thought Jeff McGavero dropped because of it, and there was a bunch of
Jeez. That's confusing. Hey, Russ.
Hey, I'm back. We'll see if this still works. So you guys were talking about costumes. Did you talk about gear at all in terms of the shoes? Because I know you made mention like, I should change my shoes. And you didn't change your shoes.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Correct. I now subscribe to the Jamil Curry, let your feet just numb out.
Let your feet numb out?
That is exactly what he said to me when I paced him at Javelina. And he said, my toe hurts or something. I'm like, should we look at it? He's like, no, you do not want to look at it. Do not take your shoe off. We just need to let it numb out.
Wow.
So I had a few foot pains, like hot spot feelings early on. And honestly, I was going to change my shoes like after the first lap or the second lap. I ended up wearing them, for 2 laps. And in the second lap, I could feel this hot spot on the side of my big toe. I was like, what is that? That is not good. I definitely need to change my shoes at the end of this lap. So I keep running, and I don't know, maybe a mile or 2 later, like I stop feeling the pain. It's not there anymore. And I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I just leave it alone, just keep going. We now know after the fact that there was definitely stuff going on in there.
I've ever seen. Her foot afterwards, I've dreamt about it every night.
I don't know. I got blood blisters on probably 6 of my 10 toes underneath the nail.
If anyone listening to this has seen Mr. Deeds and his black foot that got frostbite super bad that has no feeling in it. It kind of looked like that.
So bad. So many blisters, big blisters. I don't know. And then also like rubbing like on.
They're not just blisters either. They're like horrible blood blisters.
Yeah.
Where you know what? We should talk too much about it.
Let's move on to gear that worked really well. And I think that
that doesn't mean that the shoes didn't work. The shoes actually worked really, really, really well. Like, I do not think I would have necessarily run that fast without those shoes. And the amount that they potentially saved my legs during the race probably outweighs what happened on the toe front. And that could have happened also because of getting my feet wet from water being dumped on me.
Did we mention what you wore? The Agravix Speed Ultras?
Agravix Speed Ultras. Wore the Agravix Speed Ultras.
Same shoe as David.
Same shoe as David. Same shoe as Lauren Pirette's.
Okay.
Also, yep, she wore them as well. But yeah, maybe got some sand in there too. Like, it's a pretty sandy course, you know? So I don't know. This might just be something that happens over 100 miles. But yes, I did like the shoes. The only thing that I would say is my left Achilles started to get sore toward the end of the race. And it's now kind of swollen around there. And I think maybe next time if I wore those shoes, I would tape my ankles, because I do think I was using my ankle, you know, joints and the tops of my foot, like the bones and the muscles in the top of my foot, because there's no upper in the shoe, a lot more than I necessarily would have in something else.
And I will say, you know, Ferdinand was wearing the Tecton X3, which is the shoe that I was running in, and his feet looked as bad as yours when you were finished.
I also heard Hannah had really bad foot issues.
I just think that, you know, it's this long sandy race and you get a bunch of stuff in there. It's gonna, just gonna rub your feet.
I feel like the quintessential ultra picture for these hot races is the camera down low and then the picture up of the water being dumped on the runner's head. And you had an epic one that Howie took, and it had, you know, he had your feed hat in there. You had the women can underneath the Solomon shirt. So, you know, what's that?
The women can sports bra coming soon to a store near you.
That's what I was going to say. Like, what gear worked really well that was featured there? Because, you know, it looked like you had that on the entire day.
I did, yeah. It worked well.
You didn't have any gear issues, really.
The only thing that happened is my belt that was holding my bib broke, and so I had to just tie it in a knot.
But it's a bib holder. It's not like a...
No, it's fine. I wore the John G shorts that they're not the half tights, but they're basically like they're 3-inch short, and they have really long pockets on both sides and all around the waist belt. So I've decided like I haven't found a waist belt that I like, and maybe I just am not a waist belt person. But so when I was carrying handhelds for loops, I was able to put all of my nutrition in the pockets of those shorts.
Wow. For the entire loop?
For the entire loop. And I had my phone in my back pocket of those John G shorts for my music, and it stayed put. Like, I mean, they're awesome. So those shorts, I was wearing a Solomon tank that, great material. I didn't have any, and then the women can sports bra that's from Presio, and I didn't have any chafing at all on my arms or my like chest or anything. And then the Omius visor, and then what else? Some Tifosi sunglasses. I like those. My Aftershocks, Injinji socks, Agravix Speed Ultras, and then Solomon packs when I did have packs on, and the handhelds were Solomon handhelds as well. But here's another tip. I bought the Hydro Pack Speed Flask flip tops so that I didn't have to unscrew every, you know, at aid stations, I didn't have to unscrew my bottles, handhelds. I could just flip the top up and they could refill it.
Nice.
Put it back down.
And it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think, I'm sure it costs more, which is probably why Solomon doesn't put them on, but they are awesome.
Yeah. And then also, what was I going to say? The Feed Ice bandana, which is a Rabbit bandana. Rabbit made them for us. So yeah, that worked really well. Yeah. Koros watch, which I had 60% left on my watch after the race.
That's amazing.
60% battery life
That's
left.
what happens when you finish in 15 hours. So, feelings at the finish line, like it was really fun to see on the live stream, like Skylar Hall did a really nice little tribute, like Pride of Castle Rock, like really good person. I loved it. Loved hearing that. I hope you got to hear some of that from the live stream back. But talk about that, little piece of it and kind of allowing your emotions to filter in as you finished, the business-like approach to the 100-mile.
Yeah, Skylar's the best. He's awesome. He's so cool.
He is.
I did get to rewatch that, and actually I watched it with the boys, and Dash was like, "Oh, Mom, let's watch the finish." Yeah, that's cool. And so it's really cool to see your kids getting into this. Like, I think they had a lot of fun. And I also, like, shout out to my mom and dad and sister too, and Jess, like, and Graham. You were invaluable crew chief.
No thank you necessary.
Yes, but I think finally, like, my parents got to see a race that, like, especially my dad, he saw me at Leadville, and I think this was like my gift to him, to give him a good race experience, because he waited for me for hours and hours and hours, and was so, as a parent, now I know what it feels like to be like genuinely concerned about your child and like know that they're like hurting or suffering.
He was nervous. You went out with me for lap 4 and he told me beforehand, he was like, Corinne can run 60 miles. I've seen it. It's her distance. Anything after that, I get pretty nervous. I'm like, I think we're going to be fine. She's still running and moving well. We'll see you in 3 hours. And he was like, okay. But I could tell he was nervous.
And we ran a 3-hour lap for lap 4. Which is nuts. But yeah. So anyways, all that to say, like, yeah, I'm glad I was able to, like, do that for especially my dad.
And real quick, I'm sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought. No. I was going to talk about something a little different.
That's it.
So what I was going to talk about is, for anyone who's going to crew this race, or anybody who's thinking about bringing crew, I'd highly recommend, if you sign up for this race, immediately sign up for a tent spot. It's pretty important to get a tent spot, especially if you're going to have crew sitting out there all day. But if you do get a tent spot, this is a great crew for kids. I mean, my boys who are 10 and 13 saw Roadrunner and lizards and were fascinated by all the different types of cactuses, and were walking the trails and checking stuff out. They loved it. It was just, there was so much to see, especially from coming from Colorado, where the terrain is so different down there. And your runner comes back to you. It's not like you're in Leadville driving to Twin Lakes trying to find parking and running over with man, you just stay in the same place over and over and over. Your runner comes back. So that makes it really easy. Plus, there's so much to see at headquarters. You can go sit at the Hoka tent, watch the live stream, and they had mist coming down from the top, so you could, you weren't super hot. Or you could walk over to where the live stream was going on. There were a bunch of vendor tents. You could buy pizza. The boys got all kinds of like ice cream and pop and all kinds of terrible things for you.
It's no different than what I was eating all day.
It's just a great place to cruise. So, and it's an easy place to cruise. So if it's your first 100-miler, or if it's a crew's first 100-miler, if you want to bring parents, even like elderly parents, it's a great place to do that. So I'd highly recommend this for something like that.
And AJW says it's now on his Mount Rushmore of 100-milers in the US. And I think the vibes and just all of that makes it so approachable. And so, I can't wait for my first experience out there, whenever that will be. I'm hoping soon, but you guys have had some great experiences out there. And I guess, Corinne, I'm going to give you the last word. Any final thoughts as we close up this Fireroad episode and try to get this thing in under an hour and a half?
We got 9 miles to go. We're going sub 90 minutes for the last. No, I'm just kidding. One thing I want to say is that I had an athlete racing, Heather Grady. She was running her first 100K. And she finished. She texted me at 4 a.m. that she was done. And I am like super proud of her. So I just want to say, like, everybody that was out there, as I saw people on the loops, kind of just baking in the heat, trying to keep moving forward. There's a lot of people who did a very, very hard thing and that were out there for a lot longer than I was. And there's just this, level of grit and toughness that should be celebrated in that. So like everybody who towed the line and was able to do kind of as much of the race, even if they didn't finish as they could, like it was hot. It was a hard day and a hard environment. And so like just kudos to everybody who towed the line. And thank you for all of the, like, thanks to all of them for being like, whenever I'd pass, I got so much encouragement, and it definitely helps you as a runner. Like you do not have to endure miles and miles or hours by yourself, or like, in kind of the middle of nowhere, just dealing with your, like working through your own thoughts. You're kind of constantly cheered. And that has to do something also for the performance aspect of this. So thanks to everybody who said hi. End of the first lap, I came up on the crest of the, before you get into the horseshoe, and at the very top of it, there was a woman there wearing a women can shirt, and I was like, I just about lost it. But I saw like 4 or 5 of them out there. My friend Mandy Midget, she was working in an aid station. She actually gave me intel. She was like, do you want to know where the women are? They're second place is 6 minutes up. And she's wearing a women can shirt. And so it felt like I had like this massive support system, not to mention all of the Air Vipa people. And I was like yelling at the live stream, live studio as I went next to it, because, I feel like that's kind of a homey environment. Like all those things just added up and were all part of like why I was able to do what I out there. And yeah, I just think that, I think sometimes like sometimes in like running and in life, like you work really hard at something and you do it over and over again, and you put the time in, and maybe you don't see the effort like rewarded, you don't see the result, or you don't see improvement. And I felt like that sometimes, like even in this last year, I felt like, I'm not getting that much better. I'm not doing that much better. I'm doing okay, but like, I don't really feel like I'm hitting a next level. And I would just say like, just stick with it, because you may not know when those little breakthroughs are going to happen, but I think that they will if you stick with it. So
you're saying if you've gone out in 300s and DNF'd 300s, you should at least try one more?
Yes, you're going to nail one day. You're going to nail it. And it's going to be the best day ever when I see that happen. And yeah, I guess that's it. Just thanks to everybody who was supporting, and it was a really special day. And I don't know, it's going to still take a little more time to kind of process it, but pretty happy with it.
Well, we love it, and we're super proud of you, and we can't wait to see what all comes next. And I think that's it for the Fireroad episode of the Javelina recap. Thank you all so much.
For interviewing me and making me feel like I got on a podcast. It's the best podcast ever, Ultra Uncovered. Go follow us, rate and review, and tell your friends.
Smash that like button.
Smash that. Yeah, thanks, Russ. You'll be there 1 year in the future, and maybe I'll be pacing you.
Sounds good.
Yes, it will be.
Sounds good.
All right.